This morning, I had a cool thought that instantly connected the dots for me in terms of the future of society and the future of work in the age of AI. And I thought I'd share that with you. The core of the idea is that we're all companies now. That the line between what it means to be an individual and what it means to be a corporation is blurring and will continue to blur. And if we're all collective intelligences now, if we're all companies, then we might as well start behaving as such. Let me explain. Let's start all the way back in 1968. And generally, obviously, that time was a massive cultural revolution, the movement in the West, the disillusionment of the youth with how governments and corporations were running this planet, the realization of the tremendous powers that technology gives to us collectively, and those powers could be applied to destroy the Earth, as well as the powers that technology gives to us individually, and therefore the call for expressing that power and actually doing things with your own education, with your own tools as an individual, that was kind of in the air. And so when in 1968, Stuart Brand, the legendary futurist and the founder of the Whole Earth catalog, was writing the purpose statement for the first edition of that catalog, he wrote, "We are as gods, might as well get good at it." I'm going to steal his line and apply it to what's happening with our society and with the future of work as AI comes into play. I'm going to say we are as companies now. Might as well get good at it.
Son of a bitch. Stole my line.
As individuals start using a bunch of AI agents who work for them, these individuals sort of transcend them being a single human and start truly embracing the fact that they are now collective intelligences. So they become much more like corporations. You and I are effectively corporations now. What I mean by that is you're not just a single human doing your thing. You have a bunch of agents working for you, or at least you can have them. And that means you're starting to face the same problems and the same opportunities that companies usually face and individuals did not face before. Right, so part of the problem is how do you maintain context and coherence between all sorts of agents that are part of your collective intelligence? That's one of the problems. The other problem would be, for example, how do you make sure that you get the right kinds of individual intelligences and they all have the right permissions? And then you are much more like a CEO of a company than you are just a single person. Okay, so let's go back and explore for a second the relationship between individuals and groups of people throughout history in terms of their role in society and their dealings. Actually, the problem goes all the way back to the ancient time, as it often does, because even back in the age of Roman Empire, for example, people realized that the group is not the same as the individual, but it needs to have similar rights to the individual. What could be an example of that? Let's say you have a trading guild, or you have a city, and that kind of entity, collective entity, needs to be able to enter into contracts and all sorts of things. But people living in the city, they change, they come and go. The people governing the city change, they come and go. And so this creates a strange situation that the city or the guild can act in ways that are compatible with the way a person would act, enter into contracts, they have the responsibilities, they need to deliver on their debts and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's no single individual that you can chase and say, I'm going to take your house if something goes bad, because that individual may have left the city altogether. So how do you square this circle? This is a real problem. And the solution that the ancients came up with is essentially the same solution that we use today. And that was to give to that entity its own personhood. They realized that the corpus, as they called it, the group, if it owes you money, it's not okay to go for every single individual who ever been there for their individual property. But at the same time, it can act as a legal thing, right? And so the idea here is that the original laws were created for individuals. You know, the laws of Hammurabi, the laws from the Bible and whatnot. It's usually created for the individuals. But then people realize, oh, now we have these strange collective entities and they need to act in their own way. The easiest thing to do is to make them fake people. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church used to have the same problem that monasteries, groups of people needed to own land and do things like that. How do you square that? Well, the Pope figured out that he would use the same technique, and he actually issued to those monasteries and collectives what was called a fake personhood, right? A persona ficta, literally fake person, because that is the way to make this collective be compatible with the way the laws are designed for individuals to transact. And then obviously, through sort of the age of exploration and the companies that were not religious or not sort of cities came to place, the British East India Company and whatnot. And they just took that to the next level because they were granted, again, this kind of fake personhood. So we had this clever solution of pretending that groups of people can act as individuals, and that allowed them to act in society in the same way. Now, I think one way of looking at what's happening now is that individuals become companies, individuals become collectives. So, practically speaking, what am I talking about? Let's say you have a bunch of agents working for you in a loop. Maybe you run that through Claude Code, or maybe you have some other system. Doesn't matter. And increasingly, that will be happening for all people, right? You have one agent looking at your finances, one agent answering your emails, the next agent, Lucas summarizing your invoices, like whatever it is. And so all of a sudden, you are a collective intelligence. You are a CEO, effectively, of a company which has multiple employees. And you start facing the same problems that companies have been facing for a long while, but you didn't have to face as an individual. So as an individual, you can usually remember what you said, and you can usually maintain same context, and you can usually make all of your own decisions, and then you can come back to your notes if it's really long ago or complicated. But you don't have the problem of one part of your brain decided to do something, you didn't know about it, and now you're responsible for it as a CEO, right? But companies have been dealing with that since forever. They realize that individuals are not the same as companies. And so they have to deal with different contexts, with different parts of their collective intelligence going around and doing different things, having different levels of responsibility, managing their own finances, or sometimes not, depending on the department. And I think it's super interesting to sort of transfer that institutional knowledge gathered over the many, many generations to now how we run ourselves as individuals. Not all of that applies exactly, and certain tools would differ, but I think there's a whole lot that we can learn from that. So what does it mean to be a company? It means that, for example, governance become a really important thing. Do you have different roles? You have to be intentional about this agent having certain roles and responsibilities and levels of access, and then this agent having different roles and responsibilities and levels of access. You didn't have to think about this as an individual. We used to say, look, I'm wearing my this hat now and my that hat now, but really you could have all of that in one head. Now you have to be much more intentional about writing down and enforcing who's got what level of access. The other implication, for example, is finance, right? As we know, as companies grow, it's not sustainable for the CEO to sign all the bills. And the way companies deal with that is certain kinds of employees, which are believed to be capable of that, are given their own company credit cards, and they can do their thing, or maybe they have the right to sign contracts up to a certain value. And that, again, will very much, I believe, transfer to the situation with agents. You may need to be able to give to your agents individual sort of credit cards, or probably it will be done in crypto, with abilities to transact on their own up to a certain level, up to a certain sum, up to a certain type of commitment, right? But again, companies have developed methodologies and ideas about how to manage that. Then you obviously have the hierarchy, or broadly speaking, the organizational patterns. Again, as a single human, you didn't have to worry about this. Now you do. Who is overseeing whom in terms of your agents? Is it a flat organization where everybody's sharing context, or do you want some hierarchy? How do you deal with conflicts when somebody recommends one thing and somebody else recommends another thing? The other super interesting thing to think about in this kind of framing is, what kind of CEO do you want to be of this collective of you? Do you, for example, want to be a very operationally driven CEO who considers himself or herself primarily a manager and looking at every single task of what the agents are doing? Or do you want to be a visionary CEO who spends a lot of time hiring and empowering, and money, hiring, empowering, and then trusting the right sort of chief operating officer or whatever it is, so that they can spend their time setting the vision and doing the big things, or maybe engaging with customers, or not doing much and just be a passive shareholder or a chairman, and you get somebody else to run your life for you. So these are very interesting decisions, and there's no right answer, but this framing allows you to think about them in this way. What kind of CEO of you do you want to be? What kind of tasks do you want to do yourself versus somebody else? Delegate, right? And this is interesting because by default, everybody assumes that when you get a bunch of agents to do things for you, you have to be the operational sort of direct manager running all of them. But maybe in the future, you don't want to be that. Maybe you actually want to invest in both time and money in creating a really good sort of operating agent who becomes your chief of staff for all your other agents, right? And you can then spend time doing what visionary CEOs do. So the other really interesting things that we've known for a while about how groups of people work is that it's a strange relationship between how smart groups of people are and how smart individuals are. On the one hand, it's clear that sometimes, as Ray Kroc used to say, none of us is as smart as all of us, right? You can see that in a lot of sort of crowd wisdom situations. You can see that in a lot of really highly functioning research organizations. You can see that in even things like prediction markets, Hansen's prediction markets, right? Where the group is much smarter than any individual acting on their own. But also, I've always felt that the flip side of that coin is also true. Like, none of us are as dumb as all of us. Very often you've seen probably situations like I have when a group can make a decision so stupid that no individual member of that group would make that decision or would make that mistake. And there are lots of psychological mechanisms in place. There is sort of a sense of shared responsibility there. Therefore, it's no one's. There is a desire for sort of group coherence. There is peer pressure. There is sort of lowest common denominator type decisions that everybody can agree to. All sorts of mechanisms that we don't have time to discuss now. But sometimes all of us, the collective, is much dumber than the individual. And so companies have developed, some successfully, some have not, ways of maximizing the collective sort of cleverness and minimizing the collective stupidity that emerges from being a collective and not being an individual. And I think as you're designing your multi-agent life, the army of you, as I call it, you would need to think about, how do you avoid the problem of none of us are as dumb or as stupid as all of us. That's all the details, and I'm sure you could sort of apply that yourself, that framing of you're a company now, you might as well get good at it, to all sorts of individual layers of being a human and being a company. Finance, legal, governance, well-being, culture, right? One thing that companies have to do is they have to be much more intentional about their culture and their way of doing things so that they maintain coherence. Otherwise, they're just, a bunch of people running around and there is no company. And so individuals used to have an easier time there because you're just you and you do you, and that's fine. But now, if agents are representing you, answering your emails, then you have to invest much more time in sort of defining your style and defining your value set, just like companies do, so that the collective you can actually act in a way that is coherent and is in line with what you, the CEO of that collective, would want that collective to be. So that's the thought. I think we've always been collective intelligences in some way. This is getting slightly philosophical, but if you go back to the work of, for example, Mike Levin, right, who's saying, look, we are collective intelligences all the way down. We have always been collective intelligences down to the level of individual cells, and probably even below that. They all have minds, and then those minds come together to form a larger structure, and that larger structure has to behave in a way that is different. But this is becoming much more prominent right now in lots of decisions that we all have to make as we sort of undergo this phase transition from being individual actors to being companies. And I think it's going to be super interesting, both from a software and from a sort of culture standpoint of how we actually work with the world where the line between the companies and individuals is blurred, and every single individual is essentially a company now. What does that mean for the legal personhood? What does it mean for responsibilities? Are you responsible for your robot, running somebody over in the street or not? Or is it the company that provided the robot to you? All sorts of questions from finance to legal to cultural questions that come with it. But for me, this simple framing, we are as companies now and might as well get good at it, helps me think about sort of the future of society and what I can invest time in right now. And I hope this framing could help you as well.